Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Frank About Health. For those of you who remember, we did a show around Thanksgiving time with the Replacement Child Forum, Judy Mandel, Rita Battat, and we had Christina Shalinsky with us. But for today, we're introducing Sarah Vollman, who is on the advisory board of the Replacement Child Forum. And we were then talking about the purpose of the forum and its mission to communicate and educate with various individuals that have gone through what Judy dubbed in shows that we did together with Phyllis about replacement child syndrome. And what we wanted to do then, which we're going to do today as promised, is bring about the whole topic of forgiveness, which is something that we're going to learn from our added special guest, Dr. Jennifer Griggs, who we will discuss more in detail in our second segment. But overall, this is going to be an interesting learning opportunity for various people who have both been dealing with the issues surrounding the search for identity, if they've been replacement children, or if you are still an individual who's going through forgiveness issues. We hope that what we learned today will also help those of you as well. Let me first issue my disclaimer. For everyone out there listening to this program, please know that this is food for thought. It is not meant to dissuade you from your ongoing mental or physical health treatments that you are doing with your primary care physician, or to try to alter your medication regimen if you have one. This is meant as to be an open discussion for thought and education, and not meant to be the views of Frank About Health or talkradio.nyc. That all being said, I want to welcome you back, Phyllis. I know we've had a long vacation, and at the same time, we want to definitely have an open discussion with you about the issue of forgiveness, which, as you recall, when we did the show with Judy on both Replacement Child and White Flag, the topic of forgiveness was very poignant and very pivotal for what we're going to discuss this afternoon. So that all being said, welcome to all of you for this episode, or for being here on this episode of Frank About Health.
It's good to be back, Frank, and Happy New Year to you and to all your listeners.
Mhm.
I'm very excited about this particular program. I knew little of the subject, and I am learning exponentially each and every time we have Judy and her colleagues with us. So I'm really looking forward to this. So would you mind if I jumped in and asked the first question?
Oh, sure. But at the same time, I think I wanted to learn more about Sarah Volman's story as a replacement child, because we didn't have a chance to discuss that in November. And then we can definitely open up into the questions.
I think it's important to define what exactly the concept of replacement child is, since it's not a common
Right.
term that we use in everyday language. So, Judy, could I ask you just to give us a little bit of a construct around what the
Sure.
definition is, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll give you first the narrow definition is a child conceived and born to replace a child who's died.
Okay.
That's the narrow and strictest definition of it, but it's also been expanded to also include a child conceived to, excuse me, born to replace another member of the family who's died, or born shortly after a death, stillbirth, or miscarriage, or abortion, or so-called subsequent child. It may be replacing a sibling or another member of the family later on due to death or disability. And also in the context of adoption of a child, replacing or being replaced by a conceived child. It may also be, someone assigned to replace someone who is, has a disability sometimes, or is a challenged sibling. I had that in my case. I was kind of a double replacement child in some sense. And twinless twins is another piece of the puzzle here, of a child, a twin that has a sibling who had died, in utero. So it's not as simple as just replacing a child who has died. And also, we always want to say that the child who's a subsequent child is not necessarily a replacement child. It's all in how they are treated. and their specific condition. And so we want to make sure, that people don't think that is always the case.
Right.
I don't know if that helps with the definition.
Thank you, because I do think it's such an unusual topic, at
Yeah.
least in my circle.
Sure.
Appreciate you enlightening us with that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Frank.
Yeah.
Could I just say something that's important? That children born or adopted after the death of a child are not automatically replacement children.
Mhm.
Okay, this is a trauma that happens within the family.
Right.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, I know, Judy, we obviously know about your story and the whole relationship to that plane crash that happened in Elizabeth, New Jersey, not to mention, of course, your book, Replacement Child. And I think, Rita, you shared your story as well. But Sarah, would you like to share exactly your situation with relation to the syndrome?
Yes, thank you for asking. I was born into a family. I was born after I had a sister who died. So I'm the youngest in my family. My brother was 9, my sister Julie was 6, and my sister Anne was just a baby. She was about 1. And my 6-year-old sister Julie drowned in an accident. So it was a very sudden, obviously, death. She was a healthy, happy, very loved child. My family was extremely traumatized by her loss. Everyone in different ways, my siblings as well as my parents. And what I found out later, I didn't find this out until I was an adult, was my father said to me, "You actually were the only baby that was planned in the family," because after my sister died, my family was so miserable. They ended up kind of selling the house and moving to Italy for 6 months, which they didn't really even have the money to do, but they were so bereft. I think they were just trying to kind of find a way forward. And it was when they were in Italy that my mom, one time late at night, my father said one night late at night, she woke up and he was downstairs writing, and she came downstairs and said, "I want to have another baby. And that baby is me." Like many of us, our stories come out, and you wonder, would I be here if this hadn't happened? That's just one question of many that many people born after loss ask themselves. But it just gives you a little bit of a frame of kind of how our lives started and how our life story began, which really, for us, our life story didn't really just begin in the moment we were born, but began with the loss in many ways. It's very entwined with the death.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Wow. And Judy, when we discussed about the forum's development and how it came to be over the course of how many years, the last 5 years?
The forum, we've been in, Rita, it's 2 years, right? We've been together.
It'll be 3 in May.
It'll be 3 in May. Right.
May 4th.
Right.
And
May 4th.
so all of you have developed new ways of being able to welcome individuals like Sarah, as well as yourselves, into this group to serve as not only a source of support, but I gather a source of being able to heal and educate and actually derive a platform that's out there for outreach, correct?
And what we try to do is provide information. First of all, when people, we have lots of research that's on our website, that can help people understand this. As you say, that it's not a common thing that people talk about. So we wanted to have some, a resource. We wanted to be a resource.
It's and then we about training, really. Each person that comes in has a different story. And it's a different degree that they have felt this. Mm-hmm. So it's like we learn from everybody also. So
and we've had some webinars that have brought a community together, which is really a fascinating thing to do. Mm-hmm. And especially Christina, who has been on the show before, has been doing some teaching of her colleagues, so that there are therapists who know what to do with, a replacement child, because we've all been, I know I had been to several therapists who never touched on this, never asked the questions, and
how did you find it?
Yeah, and I
missed opportunity.
Yeah, I just want to add that I'm a therapist and I specialize in grief and loss. It's like not an accident, right, with my background that I wound up in this role. But growing up, like Judy and Rita are saying, I know that I looked for information and resources about people like me, and I was unable to ever find anything. And I know that was part of my path of leading me to do this work. And then I ended up doing a research study that I published about subsequent replacement children because there was so little out there. And the people that I interviewed, so many of them said, you know, am I normal? Is my experience like other people? What are other people saying? Because no one had had an opportunity to really connect with other people who had been through the same thing, because it's such a quiet, disenfranchised, silent loss.
It really is. Judy.
You don't realize that it's a real thing, you know, until you start talking about it. And then all of a sudden people come out of the woodwork and say, oh my God, that's either my story or I know somebody whose story it is.
Judy, can you help me understand how you all found one another and how the group began?
Yes,
it's really kind of an interesting story. I think it was our writing, and you know, I had a book that came out, and Rita, I think you and I came together first.
Right, I think so.
From the you know, and because she was when my book came out, she was in the midst of writing her book, I believe. And Christina was in the midst of writing her book and had been researching this for years. And so we kind of, you know, over the ethers, you know, found each other. And it's really was an amazing coming together, and it was almost like a sisterhood.
Yeah,
you know, we found so many things that we identified with that were the same, and you know, relationship issues and, you know, identity issues. I know Rita and I especially, you know, said, well, how many colleges did you go to? You know, how much traveling have you done? And so, you know, it was all kind of trying to find our place.
Right.
And there were so many similarities that we almost felt related to each other.
Wow.
That was interesting. You know, it's like all of a sudden you find someone who's gone through some of the same stuff, and you really just can talk a language that other people don't understand.
With no other common denominator, really.
Right, right. Absolutely. What
It's
happened?
funny, Sarah's shaking her head because I know it's the same for you too.
I know. There's even some uncanny similarities in our stories.
Yeah. So
but it sounds like each of you basically found each other in the process of your own self-discovery. So I guess, Phyllis,
Absolutely.
that's how they found each other. And I guess indirectly, I guess, to do the research of their books, they probably, of course, worked with their therapist. So by default, I guess finding the therapist was a professional necessity.
I didn't find the therapist because of this. You know, that kind of came later. What happened is when I started talking to people and realized so many people were out there that there was no answers, there was nothing on it, I started interviewing people for the book. And my book is full of people's stories, firsthand stories, you know, and also famous people's stories. And you realize how it shaped their lives. And it was just, that's how it started. And then I, you know, was just looking up Replacement Child, and I saw Judy's book, and I was so excited to, like, oh my God, is there somebody else out there that I can talk to that actually has been doing research, not just looking for me, you know, to tell them about my research. So and really I can thank
Albert and Barbara Kane, who did the original research, I think in 1964, with Holocaust survivors and you know, generations, who identified this, you know, replacement child syndrome, which I had never heard of. And once I started reading what their work was, I realized there were so many things I had in common. And then I realized, you know, what this was all about. And I think that was the key for me.
All right, we're about to take our first break. And when we return, we want to follow up on some of those closing stories before we introduce our next special guest, Dr. Jennifer Griggs. So please stay tuned as we're here with the Replacement Child Forum, and we're going to discuss forgiveness right here on talkradio.nyc and on our YouTube channel, Talking Alternative. Stay tuned.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMEs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant. And on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you on edge? Hey, we live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in. I'm Sandra Bargman, the host of The Edge of Every Day, which airs each Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and perspectives about pushing boundaries and exploring our rough edges. That's The Edge of Every Day on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Welcome back. And right here, we've just been spending the first 15 minutes of the show recapping where we left off with the Replacement Child Forum. But now is the time we pivot to where we were going to be last time, and that's the discussion of forgiveness. Phyllis, I'm giving you over the floor to introduce our special guest.
Well, it's my honor, Frank. To be honest with you, this is Dr. Jennifer Grigg, and Jennifer has an accomplished career as a physician, both clinically and academically in the field of oncology. And about 3 years ago, she layered on coaching as to one of the services she could offer her clients, her patients, and of course the world. I just want to read briefly here what Jennifer says on her LinkedIn page. She serves people who want to heal from the past hurt through forgiveness of themselves and others, and who want to reclaim their dignity. She's known for her compassion, humor, and ability to use metaphors to transform the way people think about themselves and their lives, to claim the life of joy, hope, and freedom. And I am sure that that desire is shared by all of us. So welcome, Jennifer. It's a pleasure to have you here. Jennifer describes herself as a forgiveness and dignity coach. So first thing I'd like to just ask you, Jen, is, how would you define forgiveness and how would it apply to this special situation that we're discussing tonight?
Well, thank you so much for having me in this wonderful group of people. It underscores how important community is. So I'm really honored to be here. Sometimes it's easiest to describe forgiveness by what forgiveness is not. And I find in my work that people really misunderstand what forgiveness is. They think it means if you forgive, you forget what happened. And actually, you don't want to forget. It's what happened made you who you are. And also that's how we keep from ending up in the same situations or replicating the harm that was done to us.
Right.
People also think that forgiveness means what we're saying is that what somebody did is okay. And that's not the case. The harm happened. It was wrong. It might be continuing harm. It is wrong. So we don't mean that it's okay. What we mean is that we're giving up all hope of a better past.
We're giving up all hope of a better past. So it really is putting down everything and moving forward in a far more positive way. Is that what I'm hearing, Jennifer?
Yes, it's a form of radical acceptance, and it's really an emotional shift that happens. So unforgiveness is an emotion that happens because there's a harm or perceived harm, right? We don't have to actually have been harmed. If something was perceived, If we didn't understand what happened, there's also, that's the event, a harm or a perceived harm. And then a whole host of emotions are set up. I call these hot emotions, like anger and shame. Although grief is a very important part of a grievance, the words are related. Some people view grief as a cooler emotion, but basically we have an emotional response to what happened. And then unforgiveness happens when we ruminate, when we relive, when we have intrusive re-experiencing. And then it sets up in our body as an emotion. We feel unforgiveness in our bodies. Forgiveness is an emotional shift where we no longer replay these intrusive things, whether it's something we did or something that was done to us. And it's not meant to be glib, but giving up all hope of a better past allows us to have hope for a better future.
That is just probably one of the more touching ways I've ever heard that described. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Help me understand how dignity plays into that. You describe yourself as a forgiveness and dignity coach. Please share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so dignity, unlike respect, is something that we're born with. We don't have to earn it, hustle for it. It's our inherent value and worth. It relates a lot to identity in this area of what we're talking about. It is just when we're born, we have the same amount of dignity as anybody else. And the interesting thing is, as essential as it is, you would think that it was robust and strong, but dignity is characterized by its vulnerability to injury. There are 10 elements of dignity in the work that Donna Hicks has done. She's at Harvard and she's done work across cultures and throughout multiple different countries and identified 10 essential elements that I'll go through with the bent of looking at replacement children. The first is acceptance of identity. So we're accepted for exactly who we are. You can see how that really blends with the replacement child condition of who am I, and not being accepted for exactly who we are, but being a stand-in for somebody else. The next is inclusion, being included. And in reading Judy's story, Judy was excluded from this life that happened before, and there was a lot of secret keeping. And my sense is because of the trauma to the family and the profound bereavement that the child is meant to replace, that there is a lot of exclusion of the child who is the replacement child. The third element is safety, physical safety and psychological safety, that we can be our authentic selves. If you think about dignity at work, being unsafe psychologically, whether it's teasing or bullying or harassment, the same things can play out in families, of course. So identity, inclusion, safety, understanding, acknowledgement, and recognition are the next three components. Being understood for who you are, being recognized for your contributions, and even when you fail, for your striving. That not being perfect sense that so many people who are replacement children, who identify as replacement children, might have, that they're trying so hard and they're not being recognized for their striving. Judy's father said, when she asked, am I okay? He said 60-40. And that's, if you think about not being recognized for your striving and not being acknowledged for your contributions and not being understood. Think about telling your story and people just say, oh, well, they were doing the best they could. We all need to be understood for our pain and our suffering. The other elements are being given a benefit of the doubt. And if we think about times when we're asked to give somebody the benefit of the doubt, we don't really want to, it's hard to see that people deserve that, but we need that so badly. And there are other elements like fairness, that we all abide by and are held to the same agreed upon rules. And I'm thinking about replacement children and how unfair it is to be evaluated according to a different metric. The child who is lost is often deified. You know, they can do no wrong. It's not really fair because they're being held to a different standard than we are. So I think the dignity lens and dignity consciousness, understanding what elements of dignity were violated, really sets us up to be able to forgive, because we can name not only are we I'm not a replacement child. Both my parents are, interestingly enough. But
really,
yeah.
Oh,
amazing.
Yes. Yep.
Well, Jennifer, I have to share with you. I mean, that was just a breathtaking moment. That your explanation of not just forgiveness so eloquently, but in the steps of dignity and in this, you know, in the pieces that are involved in all of that. That's I'm just really, you know, taken by the eloquence in which you explained that. So we have three people here who have shared life experiences by virtue of, you know, identifying as a replacement child. What would be some of the steps that they or anyone could take towards forgiveness? Where would they begin?
The most important thing, I think, is to understand what forgiveness is not. Because if you're embarking upon a journey, you want to know where you're going. We don't have to forget what happened to us. We don't have to say what they did was okay. We don't have to stop seeking justice, etc. It's really important to know what it is we're talking about. Once people understand what forgiveness is, they're more willing to do the work. And it is work. It's not easy. I say forgiveness is more like a sunrise than it is like a light switch. So if we know what it is, it's easier to do the work and embark upon it. The next step after that is to tell your story. All the experts on forgiveness, every single book you'll read about it starts with telling your story. And a lot of the people I work with say, but I've told my story 1,000 times and it doesn't help. And it's telling your story in a different way. First of all, telling it to the right people who can listen and not step in and give advice and explain away what happened, who can go there with you, but also to tell it more objectively. So many people I know who've been hurt, and for me, my own trauma that I experienced at work, I hadn't written it down. Once we write it down and we write down kind of sort of just the facts, not loaded up with all those hot emotions and with grief, but write it down, it helps do what's called collapse the story. It helps collapse the story and take away some of the heat of it. It's still important. It still happened. It's so important that we tell our story to the right people with a little less heat. The next thing is to name the hurt. What elements of dignity were violated? Once you have that vocabulary, as everybody here knows, it's so helpful. And the next is to name those feelings, not just the feelings that come to mind so easily, not just anger or rage or grief, but go a little deeper, usually to shame. That's the third rail of our emotional lives. The next is to grow and foster empathy for ourselves and the people who hurt us. That's a hard step. It's not required, but forgiveness interventions seem to stick more when we can soften the hurt and soften how we feel towards the other. And the last step is really to put it all together and make a commitment to live a life towards the future, to look towards the future.
You know, when I was, I'm a practitioner of Eastern philosophy, and I happen to be Buddhist and have done a lot of studying around Eastern philosophy. And one of the mantra of Buddhism is find the middle way.
Yes.
And when you were talking right now, what I was thinking is one of the teachings that we have around anger or forgiveness is try to get to neutral. You don't have to get past neutral, but just getting to neutral allows you to release and let go of so much that you can now spring off of that for yourself. It's no longer about the other person, but it's now all about you, which is finally where the focus should be.
Yes.
That all being said, we have to go on neutral for the next 2 minutes because we're about to enter our second break. But I definitely have a few questions that have developed, Jennifer. I echo what Phyllis just said. You were very eloquent and very, you were visceral to me. So thank you very much for what you just shared. When we return, we're going to follow up on that discussion and compare it with the 3 members of the Replacement Child Forum that are here today. So please stay tuned as we are here talking about forgiveness, both on talkradio.nyc and on our YouTube channel, Talking Alternative. Stay tuned.
Are you passionate about the conversation around racism? Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. TLC, host of the Dismantle Racism Show, which airs every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc. Join me and my amazing guests as we discuss ways to uncover, dismantle, and eradicate racism. That's Thursdays at 11 o'clock a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
In a post-COVID world, you may have many unanswered questions regarding your health. Are you looking to live a healthier lifestyle? Do you have a desire to learn more about mental health and enhance your quality of life? Or do you just want to participate in self-understanding and awareness? I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each Thursday, I will tackle these questions and work to enlighten you. Tune in every Thursday at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will be frank about health to advocate for all of us.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy and Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back. Well, Jennifer, I have to say, just listening to those whole steps in the process of forgiveness was giving me a sense of enlightenment in terms of just anyone in general that is looking to forgive a trauma that has been done to them. And one takeaway that I had, and please clarify for me if I need to be directed in the right place, is that those steps of reflection on your dignity are like milestones on the road to forgiveness. Am I correct?
Yes. And to be really precise about it, when we can name the elements of dignity that have been violated, it's less chaotic, and it's a more organized way of making sense of our story and why it hurts so much. So once you develop dignity consciousness, you'll see it everywhere. You'll hear it on news stories. You'll see it in your family. You'll see it among friends. You'll see it at work. So just developing an understanding of what those elements are can help you see when you violate them yourself or when they're violated. So I do feel it, to answer your question, that it's a really important step, and it's completely transformed the way I view forgiveness. If an element of dignity hasn't been violated and you want to forgive yourself, that's a whole different discussion about core values, right? If we want to forgive ourselves for something, it's usually because we've violated something that's so important to us. We'll die for it, so, to speak somewhat dramatically, and we violated that. A lot of people who want to forgive themselves, which we haven't talked about much yet, have fallen prey to a temptation. When our dignity is violated, we can lash out, we can stay in an unsafe situation, we can avoid conflict. Those are ways in which we violate our own dignity, usually in response to our dignity being violated. So it's not the same as violating a core value.
So I gather those people who don't understand forgiveness don't even understand how they've been violated, or don't understand where their dignity has been violated.
Yes, they just feel it in their body. They know something was wrong, but they can't piece out what's happened. And a lot of times when we want to forgive, it's not just one thing, right? It's especially if we're talking about children forgiving family members, there are multiple things that happened. And one way that we break that apart is almost like beads on a string. Let's break out one event that happened, what element of dignity, and work through it. Again, it's more like a switch, it's not like a switch, it's more like a sunrise. So it does take work, and different things that happen violated different elements of dignity.
Jennifer,
Amazing.
I'm working with my coaching clients around grief and bereavement. One of the things that I try to share with them is that the process of navigating through grief and bereavement is not linear. So, people, can Google the steps of death and dying as outlined by Kubler-Ross, which has now been applied to the process of navigating grief and bereavement. So, it starts with denial and it moves on to anger. And, and I've had so many of my coaching clients say to me, I thought I was doing so much better. And then on the anniversary of something, I'm back to square one. Is that a similar experience with forgiveness?
Oh, absolutely. If you think about something you've been successful at forgiving and you view remembering or a flare up as a sign that you failed, you're welcome to Earth School, right? I mean, you're going to be reminded the scent of the air, that time of year, the way the light hits the wall, somebody you see. The goal is to sort of deflate and collapse that heat. But you're having flare-ups is totally normal. And in fact, we sort of want those because they're signals that something important has happened, right? So do we want to, grief is a sign of love, right? We don't grieve somebody we didn't love. So we don't want to completely forget at those anniversaries. The goal is to collapse the pain a little bit.
One takeaway that I've gotten from this discussion is that I can now understand why you, Judy, you, Sarah, and you, Rita, as well as Christina, when she was last here, have basically gone through whole decades of research and gathering and support, because as a child, when you're still learning about if you were the replacement child, you don't have an understanding of what dignities, if any, were violated. So you're not even grasping a sense of violation. You're just grasping the way you're being, whether it's isolated or challenged or put in a replacement situation. So what you've talked about in the last 40 or so minutes, Jennifer, is very interesting, because it's almost like a secret that the three of you, as part of the Replacement Child Forum, can now introduce into your forum if it already isn't in place.
I was going to say what really resonated with me, Jennifer, what you were talking about is the steps that you said. And apparently I unwittingly went through all of those steps without knowing that, that was it. You're telling your story and, being dispassionate about it and getting the facts, which is what I was, concentrating on through, especially writing Replacement Child, was collecting those facts for whatever reason. And I wasn't sure why. And I wasn't sure that it was my story either. So all of those things and the understanding that comes from that can lead you to forgiveness. I think that was very poignant the way you put that.
Right. I also got that you said you feel it in your body. And I feel like before it was even a conscious thought of what is this, I felt something wasn't right, that I was different in some way, that my home was different in some way, that I was being treated differently by my mother than other mothers treated their kid. There was just something off. And I couldn't pinpoint it until I really had a name, until something happened that gave me the little light bulb that then I could do the research.
Yeah, and Frank, to speak to what you said also, what's interesting about this too is I think in most families, parents who have a child after loss have no idea that child born after loss might be impacted by the loss in some way.
Right.
That's kind of a myth that, something that happened before your birth, well, it has nothing to do with you. It won't impact you in any way. So nobody in the family really identifies or understands what's going on. So there's so much happening that no one is naming or understanding.
Sarah, I know as a psychologist, you have an article now that's been published And just out of curiosity, was there a cathartic moment during the writing of that article? Did you feel as though you inched your way close to forgiveness as you wrote the article, or at least started the process?
For me, myself, well, it's really interesting. I was so interested and kind of excited to talk about forgiveness tonight. And Jennifer, I just want to say how much also I really appreciated your definition of forgiveness and thinking about it as kind of a radical acceptance. Because the first thing that I thought about when I thought about forgiveness in terms of our topic is that one thing that's really complicated for people in our role is that it's really hard to resent or be angry or even acknowledge that there is something to be forgiven when you're talking about a grieving parent, because everyone is very protective of the grieving parent, including us. And we feel terrible for our parents, and we feel terrible for our siblings. We feel terrible for our families for what they've gone through. So for us to even get to a point of acknowledging that maybe we need to forgive our parent for something in the way that they treated us is very complicated.
Yeah.
Mm.
I agree with that.
I
Totally.
totally agree with that.
Yeah,
Totally
absolutely
agree
true.
with that.
It kind of goes in line also with the quote you said, Jennifer, about that forgiveness is forgiving a past that will never be. Or you used a different word for it. But I know that in the process of moving forward, probably what gets a lot of people to focus and ruminate about the past is they're afraid to look forward because they think that the future is going to be even darker than the past. Is that a correct assessment?
Yes, people lose hope. They lose hope for the future. I think, yes, I just answer that simply, yes.
Jennifer, you were saying like you have to look at your story in a different way and take it apart. I remember reading something that said, tell your story like a hero's journey. Think of your story as a hero's journey. I thought that was so profound that if you could turn it around and reframe it, you get different elements for yourself.
That's what happens with forgiveness. You move from being the victim in your story to the hero.
To the hero.
There's
and
also
the strength is within you.
There's some theory out there that I think you guys would love to hear about. Ted Rainierson, who wrote a book called Restorative Retelling. And it's about the process of when we tell, it's really focused on traumatic loss, but it's about the fact that when we tell and retell a story, that the story can change every time we tell it, and that we ourselves can change in the telling of the story, which I think is exactly what you're kind of talking about, Jennifer.
Yeah. And Judy, come to think of it, the book White Flag, the story on addiction, post the writing of Replacement Child, you play the part of a hero in there for your niece. So I'm wondering, were you even conscious about the possibility that what motivated you to write the book, besides a further exploration of your life as a replacement child, was your way of making yourself into a hero from your experience? Would that be
I think a little different than that, only because I think what happened was I've always been the solver and the one that's going to make things better. And that was my role as that replacement child, and still my role with my niece. So it kind of just fed right through in that way.
And that's such a common role for people who are born after loss, that we were born to try to kind of fix a family, and we become fixers. I'm a therapist. I mean, it's
yeah. My degree's in psychology. I always call it the fixer in the family.
All right. Well, that all being said, we're definitely going to go to our next break, our final break. And then when we come back, we're going to be talking about the future as we go on the road to establishing better ways of forgiveness for all of our issues, whether they're in the replacement child category or others. But this has been a very enlightening show for me, just being an observer and at the same time learning about the whole psychology of forgiveness. So that all being said, please stay tuned as we return to this, in my regard, special episode of Frank About Health, right here on talkradio.nyc and on our Talking Alternative YouTube channel. Stay tuned.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy and Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
In a post-COVID world, you may have many unanswered questions regarding your health. Are you looking to live a healthier lifestyle? Do you have a desire to learn more about mental health and enhance your quality of life? Or do you just want to participate in self-understanding and awareness? I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each Thursday, I will tackle these questions and work to enlighten you. Tune in every Thursday at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will be frank about health to advocate for all of us.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back. And so here we have been for the last 45 minutes looking at this whole construct and style of forgiveness, which I am completely amazed at. And I thank you, Jennifer, for appearing on this show with the Replacement Child Forum members. I guess I'd like to know, do either of you feel that Jennifer offers something that you guys have yet to introduce within your forum, or is there something of added value that you were able to learn today that could help other members of your organization?
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
definitely.
I love the clarity that you present this with, and especially those steps and
the layers.
Absolutely, it can definitely help our community, because this is a big part of it. I mean, everybody has a varied situations and things that they in their families that have happened to them, and I think forgiveness is something they need to move forward,
and everybody's in a different place in their story too.
Yes. So Jennifer, when you were I guess researching the understanding of forgiveness, especially in the area with dignity, was there a specific audience that you were focused on? People suffering from a form of trauma, or people suffering from other kind of mental health related challenges?
I would say forgiveness is a stretch for a lot of us, in part because we don't understand it. Like Phyllis said, it's something for us. A lot of people say they don't deserve it. The people who hurt me don't deserve it, which I would imagine is less the case with families and people who are replacement children, because there is almost an abundance of empathy. But people really, I think all of us could benefit from understanding forgiveness.
Yes.
Jennifer,
So like you're saying, forgiveness starts with ourselves first. Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sarah.
No, sorry. I was just going to say, Jennifer, I thought your definition of forgiveness was actually very empowering, because instead of being entangled with the relationships of the people who hurt us, it's something that we can do kind of for ourselves if we're trying to have some acceptance about our past. And so I think that could be a really good model actually for people in our position, because like I mentioned before, I think it's really complicated to even acknowledge that maybe people in our family did something wrong when we had this terrible loss. But if we can just look at our own selves and say, can I have more acceptance about what my childhood was and wasn't? I think that may be something that people can access more readily.
Well, I think that's what it is. I think when you understand where somebody is coming from, then you can forgive much easier. If you really walk in their shoes and see where they've been and what's hurt them and how they're reacting, you can understand, and then you can forgive.
I think
Incredible.
if I had heard Jennifer talk, years ago, it wouldn't have taken me all these years to figure this out.
Jennifer, where have you been?
It wouldn't have taken, the 4 years of writing the book and, everything else that went with that.
You know,
It looks like we've accomplished quite a bit here tonight, Frank. We put 4 people in the room who really needed to meet one another.
Absolutely.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And I'm hoping that each of you can communicate even beyond this show to, I don't know, Jennifer, if maybe you can actually speak with the replacement
come on
child
our forum one day, and we'd love that.
Exactly.
Yes,
to join us. I found something. This is just sort of accidental on Facebook about forgiveness, and could I just read it? It's very short. It's a Buddhist prayer of forgiveness. It says, "If I have harmed anyone in any way, either knowingly or unknowingly, through my own confusions, I ask their forgiveness. If anyone has harmed me in any way, either knowingly or unknowingly, through their own confusions, I forgive them. And if there is a situation I'm not yet ready to forgive, I forgive myself for that. For all the ways that I harm myself, negate, doubt, belittle myself, judge, or be unkind to myself through my own confusion, I forgive myself." I just thought that was beautiful. And it just happened to pop up like 20 minutes before I came on here.
There are no coincidences, Rita.
No, there's none.
Right.
I agree. I think coincidence is fate hitting you in the face.
If people want to reach out to you, Jennifer, I know that you're on LinkedIn. Okay. And I'm sure people can, just put Jennifer J. Griggs into LinkedIn and come and find you. How else can they find you?
My website is jennifergriggs.com, and I hold forgiveness groups and self-forgiveness groups regularly. They're small, they're trauma informed, and all sharing is done just between 2 people. So there's almost instant safety, and would welcome anybody who's interested. I'm also on Instagram, Dr. Jennifer Griggs Coaching, if people want to follow me there.
Okay, and each of you as members of the Replacement Child Forum, what books do you have to promote, as well as what are you working on that has yet to be released? Starting with you, Judy.
Well, my book is Replacement Child, my first book, and my second book is White Flag. And right now I'm not working on anything. I'm resting.
Good for you.
Okay, and you, Rita?
My book is Replacement Children, The Unconscious Script, and my co-author is Dr. Abigail Brenner. And we're making it into an audio book, and it will be on audio in February, hopefully, the end of February.
Oh, that's right. White Flag is coming out in audiobook as well.
And White Flag is wonderful. You won't be able to put it down.
Yes. No, I think I still have my questions from each chapter when we had done that show together. And you, Sarah, you mentioned with Phyllis that you're working on a paper that is going to be released soon.
Well, I have a clinical article. I don't know if it would be of interest to everyone, but for those who want to read more clinical articles, that was published in the Omega Journal of Death and Dying about replacement children. It's actually on the Replacement Child Forum website. So if anybody wants to look at it, you can easily access it there. And I'm also currently co-authoring a book with Joanne O'Leary on this topic that's going to be a book for the layperson. It's not ready yet, but I will keep you posted. Please, keep an eye out for it. And I'm also on LinkedIn if anyone wants to connect with me there. Happy to connect.
All right. And both you, Judy, and Rita, all of your books and audiobooks are on Amazon.com at this time, or on the website as well?
They're on both.
Okay, good. All right. And, basically here, this has been an interesting 7 years since Frank About Health launched right here on Talking Alternative Broadcasting, which is now known today as talkradio.nyc. But it is also the culmination of 70 episodes that we were able to put together, with this one being the 70th. So I want to thank you all for that milestone, and you, Phyllis, for being here for about 40 of them, maybe 50 of them. I have to check back in the catalog. But I know that there are going to be some changes coming up in the next 12 weeks when I come up with my next season, starting next Thursday. We're going to be talking about epilepsy and narcissism, combination of the two. And my guest will be Danielle Swanson, who started the show with me 7 years ago and back in May of 2021, as well as Jeff Dimitrak. And we're probably going to be launching an event probably in the next coming months from that show. More to stay tuned for those listening right here on talkradio.nyc. And you, Phyllis, I understand that you might be taking a brief hiatus for a while, but I know that we will be together again, doing more oriented shows towards a future life, a future healthier life in 2023. And I already mentioned to you about one in particular that I'm working on, so I look forward to telling you the progress on that as it develops. But is there anything else you would like to share about what you might be working on the side?
Well, first of all, let me just say I am going to take a brief hiatus from the program. But Frank, thank you for the opportunity of letting me be your co-host. I know I came on as a guest, and we hit it off so quickly. And the idea of going from, what I felt as a very valued guest to being invited to be the co-host and meeting all the interesting people we've interviewed together, it's just been an honor.
Yes.
I am working on the second edition of my book, Bringing Shadow Behavior into the Light of Day, Understanding and Effectively Managing Bullying and Incivility in the Workplace. So that is what I'm taking my hiatus to do some work on that, because it's got to meet a publishing date. But again, it's been an honor. And ladies, I just really want to say how much I've enjoyed this evening. And Jennifer, you did not disappoint. I just love bringing my coaching colleagues on, because it's such a fabulous specialty that people need to access more and more.
Yes, absolutely. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we're 1 minute before we have to sign off, but I want to thank you all for following Frank About Health on talkradio.nyc, on our YouTube channel. Also, for those Facebook Live members, we will be returning to Facebook at a date to be announced. And on my website, frankrharrison.com. I've always had the mission to first talk about epilepsy, then bring about the light of COVID when we were all under quarantine. And then thanks to Phyllis, we were able to branch out into caregiving and forgiveness, as well as other mental health issues. And let's not forget Judy with both addiction as well as the whole replacement child concept. I definitely am going to be reformatting the show. There will be a new location. Right now, I'm at WeWork at the Brooklyn Navy Yard, but probably I'm scheduling March. I will be starting to air from Hilton, various Hiltons throughout New York City, to be determined, but at the same time, as per the guest that I'm going to be featuring that evening. But stay tuned to Frank About Health next week and for the next 12 weeks after. Simultaneously, stay tuned to tomorrow's slate of shows here on talkradio.nyc, starting with Philanthropy in Focus with Tommy D, ending with Always Friday with Steve Fry, and then we start the whole thing over again next week right here on Talking Alternative Broadcasting. All right, thank you again. Stay tuned for the next show on the network, and we're signing off. And thank you all again, all of you, for being here on the episode.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So you all, and thank you, Dylan, for producing the show. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.